So let's be honest here for a second. Mamushi's invasion looks terrifying on paper. Endless clones, rapid multiplication, and a strategy that even Shikamaru himself didn't fully account for. But here's the irony. Inconvenient issues standing in the middle of all of that tension. This teeny tiny problem. Boruto, Otsutsuki, Kawaki, Uzumaki. Because when your story features two walking extinction level events who have already proven they can delete dozens of these enemies without breaking a sweat, your invasion arc, it suddenly has a credibility problem, for being honest here. And no, this isn't the Boruto power scaling is being broken type rant. That's not a situation like that. I'm not gonna poke fun at the people that are completely overreacting to every single eeny, teeny, meeny, weeny, tiny event. That ain't this. This is me saying, hey fam, we might have a logistics problem. Because if Boruto and Kawaki were truly allowed to cut loose right now, Mamushi's clones, that army, they wouldn't be in an apocalypse. They would quite literally be facing what the chapter was called when Boruto used Karma, pest control. So join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video where you'll be see your original Boruto chief. It's going to be breaking down why Mamushi's invasion accidentally might be exposing a Boruto and Kawaki problem that the story has. Why Shikamaru's decision to sideline them, while it does make sense logically, it's also dangerously walking a line narratively that might implode this arc. And more importantly, it brings into question why Ikimoto, somebody that calls Toriyama a eternal sensei, why he's making a mistake that Toriyama went out of his way to avoid when drawing Dragon Ball's manga. And yes, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt here. That's my rule with ongoing series. I love to talk about different things, weigh the pros and cons, talk about what I think worked well, talk about what I didn't think worked well, try to dig into the guts of the story. But with ongoing series, my rule of thumb is to always wait to see how it plays out, because I understand chapters are not written month to month. Chapters are usually planned out well in advance. So there's an end game here that I just don't know where it's going. So I do want to give the benefit of the doubt, but based on the information we have now, I do have some concerns. And full transparency, I'm watching this very closely because this arc has potential to land in a very good way, or it has potential to completely faceplant. So let's just get right into it. Boruto and Kawaki have already proved that the problem's there. And by the problem, I mean them. They complicate things in a big way. We've already seen Boruto and Kawaki fight against Mamushi's clones, and it wasn't close at all. Like, between the two of them, they wiped out a lot across a handful of panels. I'm exaggerating the exact number, but in separate battles no less. Boruto and Kawaki collectively wiped out roughly 20 Mamushi clones with almost casual efficiency. That's very important to take note of when you consider they planned for how many? 30. Boruto and Kawaki took out 2/3 like it was nothing. No desperation, no damage stacking, no, oh no, we're being overwhelmed. Boruto used Karma, Kawaki used Karma, and they completely just took them out. Clean execution. Boruto in particular showed something that cannot be ignored at all. Precision at a catastrophic scale. When Boruto tapped into Momoshiki's power and he fired off that super giant Rasengan, it should have all purposes, all things being equal, completely leveled the city block. But instead, Boruto, he showed a lot of skill here. The street beneath him, it was completely unharmed. The surrounding structures, they remained intact. The village didn't suffer any collateral damage. That's not raw AP. That's containment control. That's battlefield awareness at a level that immediately disqualifies him from being just another asset. That disqualifies him from being the very thing that Shikamaru called Boruto and Kawaki in part 1, bomb brats. That is a level of control when it comes to area of effect that cannot be downplayed at all. And with Kawaki, Mamushi, he isn't facing any better odds. Between Sukuna Hikona's shrinking and resizing, Daikokuden's storage ability and summoning, as well as just Kawaki having Ishiki's overall powers and his sheer willingness to use lethal force without hesitation, Kawaki is practically built to deal with mass-produced enemies. We saw how quickly he was just shooting chakra rods through their eyes. If the Mamushi clones are a problem, then Boruto and Kawaki, they're the solution. Which leads me to what I would argue is a very uncomfortable truth. The numbers don't matter when these two are active, and that's the problem. Mamushi's threats, they basically hinge on one core concept: multiplication. Shikamaru did not plan for the clone count to escalate this fast. Kashin Koji's foresight didn't account for this behavioral shift. The battlefield changed. You might be going, well, they can just have Boruto to make shadow clones. Shadow clones split your chakra evenly amongst the number of clones you make. If Boruto made 4 clones, they'd all be operating at, say Boruto made 3 clones. So do easy math. If Boruto made 3 clones, and it's Boruto and his 3 clones going out there, they all got 25% of Boruto's chakra. Is 25% of Boruto enough to take down the Mamushi clones? I don't know. I don't think so. So that's where, again, you start getting into some dangerous situations. But the battlefield did shift when the numbers got well over 100, despite what Boruto and Kawaki did. And that's all fair, but numbers only matter when they outpace the ability of your enemy to clear them. Boruto and Kawaki, they don't fight like normal shinobi. Boruto definitely fights like a normal shinobi, but he has Otsutsuki powers. But Boruto and Kawaki, when you look at their skill set, they're basically a walking area deniability for someone like Mamushi. Boruto has 9 million Rasengan variations. He has Flying Raijin. Boruto is a monster. Kawaki, again, he has Ishiki's powers. That makes him a monster. Even conservatively speaking, if Boruto and Kawaki were able to eliminate 10 to 15 clones per engagement like it's nothing, Mamushi would need hundreds, potentially thousands of clones in order to overwhelm them. And that's before you start factoring in Daemon is sitting there waiting to fight somebody. Delta, she has a ranged lethality with those chakra blasts. You have Sarada with the Mangekyo Sharingan, particularly second power. We don't know what it is. You got a lot of coordinated high-tier suppression at your disposal. You even got Mitsuki out there. Mitsuki can do a lot of sneaky stuff as Orochimaru's son. So when Shikamaru is ordering all these characters, Boruto, Sarada, Delta, Kawaki, to stand down, the audience isn't confused by the logic. We understand why he did it. The battlefield shifted, so we gotta find something else to do. We gotta find a better counter, but I do think that there's a bit of a confusion by the implications, because it starts to feel like the story's saying, hey fam, I need you to ignore the fact that the strongest characters here, they could probably end this Mamushi threat, but just trust me for a second, bro. They're not gonna do anything right now. And I think that's dangerous territory. So the reason why it's dangerous territory is it's letting the next generation shine. That's good, but it also comes at a cost. So let's be clear, that part does work, but again, it comes at a cost. Team 10, Himawari, the coordinated takedowns, I love seeing it. That emphasis on teamwork, that's something I love. That is classic Naruto DNA. It is something I completely enjoy every time I read Naruto fights. That's good storytelling. Seeing weaker characters survive against overwhelming threats through strategy instead of just relying on raw power, that's exactly what this franchise does at its best. But here's a trade-off. You can't spotlight underdogs by artificially restraining god-tier fighters unless the restraint feels like it's unavoidable. Right now, Boruto and Kawaki are not injured. They're not sealed away. They're not unconscious. They aren't removed from the battlefield by things outside of their control. They're literally just waiting. And that only works if it leads to something. Otherwise, it becomes near to stalling. And I think that if you do that, that is very dangerous. And that also brings me to why Shikamaru's choice, it makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't. So from Shikamaru's perspective, it's very rational. The enemy's numbers, they've changed far beyond anything that he's been able to calculate. The clone behavior is changed. Even Sarada has taken note of it. Their original plan, it no longer seems optimal. So he's freezing the board. He's reassessing, he's gathering intel, and he's trying to overcommit assets. He's trying to maintain flexibility. That is textbook strategy command. If any of you guys play chess, if any of you guys play sequence, if any of you guys play shogi, you get exactly what Shikamaru was doing. I completely understand it. But from a storytelling perspective, when I just take away the fact that, okay, in character for Shikamaru to do this makes sense. But when I put on my hat as a editorial assistant, I'm going, wait a second. Yes, this creates tension, but you're opening up the potential that this creates tension in the wrong direction as well. Instead of asking, how will they survive? I think you start opening up the door for the audience to start asking this question. Why aren't these characters ending this now? That is a huge difference. Yes, there's supposed to be a suspension of disbelief. You need that for a shonen. It's like when I get into arguments with Dragon Ball fans and some of the chats I'm in with Dragon Ball fans, they'll always bring up, well, why doesn't Frieza just blow up the planet as soon as he goes there? Because he can breathe in space and other people can't. There's a suspension of disbelief. You have to account for characters acting in a way that is in character. It's out of character for Frieza to do something like that. Just like it is out of character for someone like Shikamaru to overcommit resources in a situation like this. So in character, I get why Shikamaru is doing it, but I am starting to question from a craft perspective this situation. And I look at this and I kind of go, Ikimoto is somebody that says Toriyama was his eternal sensei and Toriyama was Kishimoto's sensei. So how is he making the mistake that Toriyama sidestepped brilliantly? And that brings me to the point that made my eyebrows go up here. So here's the thing. Again, Ikimoto's an open admirer of Toriyama. Kishimoto is somebody that was mentored by Toriyama. Ikimoto repeatedly described himself as being an eternal student of Dragon Ball. And Toriyama had a very specific solution to this exact problem that Boruto has right now. Whenever Goku hit a certain level of power, once you got about 220, it's either 130 or 230 chapters in the Dragon Ball. Once you hit a certain point, Toriyama understood, I'm removing Goku. Not sidelining him, just outright removing him. In the Saiyan saga, he's dead, running along Snake Way to train, then running along Snake Way to get back. The Namek saga, he was hospitalized at the beginning, and then he was recovering after the Ginyu fight, and then he shows up to fight Frieza. Cell saga, he's sidelined with the heart virus for a chunk of that arc. And then he steps aside after training Gohan in order to let Gohan fight. Buu saga, he's literally dead and bound by time limits for a majority of that arc. Toriyama understood something crucial. If the strongest character is present but inactive, tension dies. And when tension dies, you don't have sustainable conflict. And as a writer, if your story does not have sustainable conflict, you don't have a story. So he didn't bench Goku per se. He just made it a lot harder for him to jump into the fight right away. And that's the difference with what Ikimoto's done. And if I was in the room with Ikimoto, I would kind of pose, can you find a way to put your own twist on that? Again, there may be something that's built in. It may very well be Boruto's going off to save Kobu. Maybe Kawaki's going off to visit Naruto. Who knows? Again, I'm giving benefit of the doubt because I know these chapters are planned in advance. We're at chapter 31 coming up. Chapter 32 is already in the process of being inked by the assistants, and chapter 33 is being discussed. They work very well in advance, but I'm looking at Boruto's story right now as it is, and I'm going, Ikimoto's already built in removable mechanics that he chose not to use. He's teased them, but he hasn't used them. So let me explain to you what I mean, why I think that there was a mistake made here with this arc. Boruto's a rogue ninja. He's got a kill on sight order. He's public enemy number 1. You can play with that. We saw it teased. Boruto briefly got captured. So maybe there's something planned for that. And if it is, I will completely walk this back. That is why when I do discussions and everything, I try not to jump the gun too much. But you also have Kawaki actively pursuing upgrades that could destabilize everything because he's volatile, he's unpredictable, and he's also radioactive because of that. You could have just as easily had a situation where they're narratively removed because Amato was doing upgrades on Kawaki and Kawaki's unconscious and could not be woken up because whatever procedure he's doing is still ongoing. Boruto could have been forced in a situation where he's dealing with more Konoha Shinobi while also trying to deal with those Mamushi clones. That makes things very messy. And as any writer, or just like if you go to book clubs or whatever, you talk to people that are really deep into literature, right? They'll all tell you messy isn't necessarily a bad thing because messy means that you have conflict. And when you have conflict of this level where there's so many different things where you can be stirring the pot, you set up the opportunity for a really good delayed payoff. Not everything is about the hype moment. Not everything is about the ore farming. Sometimes the delayed payoff is the best route to go. The 48 Laws of Power refers to it as being to paraphrase, despise the free lunch. That allows for a third party to basically keep them on the sideline for a bit. They're close enough to help, but they're also in a situation where they can't directly step in. And in this situation, we just have it where they're close enough to help, but they're told stand down for now. And that's something concerning. Again, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, and it matters a lot because this is an ongoing release. Judging a shonen arc midstream is dangerous. And to be blunt, anybody that judges a shonen arc or situation right there on the spot without waiting to see for the payoff, you're reading manga wrong when you do that. Subversions don't reveal themselves early. Payoffs often recontextualize everything. This could be a brilliant reason for a situation like this. There could be something planned that none of us are looking at. A sudden shift that only Boruto or Kawaki could encounter. A trap that activates once they engage. Something that we just never saw coming. A moral or political consequence waiting to spring into action. And if that payoff lands, then every concern with this completely evaporates. But if Boruto, Kawaki, Delta, and Sarada spend the majority of this invasion just standing around, then yeah, this becomes a real problem. Yeah, this becomes something where the review for whatever chapter ends this arc probably turns into a rant. If you're an OG sub, you know, I think it was Boruto chapter 43. I was not a fan of that Borushiki reveal. I took some issues with it. I didn't think that the payoff was necessarily the best. There are a few things, like I really thought there was a rush to get to Momoshiki taking over Boruto's body, and I thought that the impact shot could have been different. But part of the reason why I was a bit let down is I felt like that moment was building towards Momoshiki taking over Boruto going into that Boro fight. And when I first got to it, I wasn't happy with it. Now, after going through part one and rereading it, that moment hits better now. That's why I say delayed payoff. You let the story develop something, and then you see after the fact what the impact is. Once we got to the Ishiki battle and Boruto reveals, like, no, I knew what was going on, and it scared the living hell out of me. That scene from chapter 43 all of a sudden aged a lot better for me. I've gone through this with Chainsaw Man. If you've kept up with my blind reactions for One Piece, it's the same thing. I've had moments where I'm like, what the hell am I reading? And then it gets paid off. I'm like, my God, this is brilliant. So I'm willing to, eat crow on that. I'm concerned now, but I'm willing to eat crow if it works out in the end. And that's honestly the joy of keeping up with an ongoing manga, to get to the point of the subversion expectations, then see how the author pays it off. But I would just kind of say, this is me just voicing my concern as a long-term reader. I'm not condemning it at all. This isn't supposed to be some negative Nancy video, as my aunt likes to say. This is just me as a fan. I treat these videos like it's best friend talking to best friend. Like, if you're over my house right now and like we were watching some anime, or we wanted to talk about the manga or something, you'd be sitting on the couch, I'd be sitting on the couch, and we'd have like some sparkling water and we'd just be talking about the manga, because I don't drink beer anymore. Like, that's something that we would be doing. So I don't think Mamushi's invasion is failing, but I do think it's walking a tightrope. And I kind of feel like the story has to justify why the strongest characters aren't solving the problem that they were clearly designed to be able to solve. If Ikimoto sticks this landing, this arc, I think it will age beautifully. I think that if you go back when this arc is done and you just read it start to finish, I think that this has the bones of a good arc. You just can't tell because you don't know how it's going to end. So does Ikimoto stick this landing? We have to see. But if he doesn't, I think it risks becoming too textbook of an example of power escalation, outrunning narrative structures, and falling into the trap that, and I'm not saying this to throw shade, but falling into the trap that I felt KRYPTONIAN did at times, which is falling into the trap of just doing some generic shonen stuff. I'm a big KRYPTONIAN fan, but there's some stuff that happened last year where I'm like, okay, that's some generic shonen shit. And I do want to see Boruto sidestep that. So I'm going to be watching this very closely, because when gods sit by idle, stories have to work twice as hard to keep their stakes alive. But this might just be me. I'm curious to know what you guys think. In the meantime, click here on the left to check out this Naruto Explained video, or click here on the right to check out videos from other two anime channels where I talk about non-Naruto anime and manga.